Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of the SERMAPod. Today's episode is Don't Ever Give Up, the importance of charitable organizations. My name is Brian Rosenblatt. I am General Counsel for SERMA. With me today as my dear friend, Alex Papa, a partner at Weber Gallagher, as well as my new friend, Katherine DeStefano, General Counsel and Chief Human Resources Officer for the V Foundation for Cancer Research. Alex, Katherine, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having us, Brian.
So SERMA, the Sports and Entertainment Risk Management Alliance, is the first risk management association devoted entirely to the sports and entertainment industries. It is an organization of risk managers, claims managers, general counsels, outside counsel, and other associated professionals who work in the sports and entertainment fields. Our mission is to be the world's foremost resource for information and networking in the sports and entertainment risk industries. We strive to provide a respectful, transparent, and inclusive dialogue where members can share ideas, best practices, and strategies in managing risks and claims. SERMA is a marketplace of ideas for those in sports and entertainment risk and the claims industry. We share resources, best practices, strategies. We are inclusive of a broad range of professionals, ideas, viewpoints. We present educational and networking opportunities in an intimate environment that promotes relationships and building and individual growth. Our goal is to be the foremost resource for sharing current trends and strategies, as well as providing endless networking opportunities. These opportunities will present themselves both virtually and in person at events, such as our presentation today. So, thank you everyone for joining us and for listening to me ramble on a little bit about SERMA. Um, so, sports and entertainment risk management. Sports and entertainment. It's cool. It's fun. It's a sexy industry. We get to enjoy it. Uh, the attorneys, the risk managers, the insurers, we're not the celebrities, we're not the athletes, we're not the one on the court or on the stage, but we get to live and play in that world. And what comes along with the privilege of being part of such a really cool and vibrant industry is a responsibility to help give back, a responsibility uh, for social progress, for social change, and for doing the right thing. We sit in a position where we're privileged to do this. So today's topic, we're going to be talking about risk management with charitable organizations, with 501c3s, a couple of different types of organizations, and it's a privilege to be here. I get to serve as general counsel for a few different charitable organizations here in Illinois. Um, but today we're sitting here with Katherine DeStefano from the V Foundation for Cancer Research. And for those of you who don't know yet, the V Foundation is one of the world's foremost charities for cancer research. Catherine will get into a little bit about the endowments and whatnot, but 100% of all donations to the organization go directly to cancer research. None of it goes to overhead, marketing, trips, none of that. It's just an absolutely brilliant, brilliant foundation. So with that, Catherine, I want to welcome you again, and I'm going to let you tell us a little bit about the V Foundation.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me today, Brian and Alex. It's a pleasure to be here and share a little bit more about the V Foundation and sort of what we're launching here with SERMA. So founded in 1993 by the late legendary Coach Jim Valvano and ESPN, the V Foundation's mission is to fund game-changing cancer research and all-star scientists to accelerate victory over cancer and save lives, really to save more of the people we love. And when you think of risk, right? Cancer is probably one of the greatest risks, if not the greatest risks, to all of us. We'll either 40 out of 100 men and 39 out of 100 women are projected to experience and be diagnosed with cancer at some point in their lifetime. And right, even if not directly diagnosed, I'm sure we've all had loved ones, friends, family, and cancer's impacted our life in one way or the other. So the V Foundation, as Brian mentioned, 100% of the donations go towards cancer research. To date, the V Foundation has funded over $458 million of cancer research grants to over 1,400 grantees at 163 institutions. We truly fund the best of the best scientists um, in North America. As mentioned, with the direct donations going directly to cancer research, the funding, exactly where your dollars go. Um, and also very timely is, we're in the middle of V Week. So if you're watching ESPN, if you're tuned in, the Jimmy V Classic will be tomorrow night at Madison Square Garden. Hence one of the reasons I'm here with Alex in New York. And so we're very excited. Another sort of tie to risk here is one of our partners, Principal, who, right, we know is a financial services and insurance company, through its foundation and the generosity of its employees, has pledged with ESPN that it will match dollar for dollar up to $1 million during V Week. So that will double the impact of donations that are received during V Week. And personally, the V Foundation to me, as Brian mentioned, it's a personal, purpose-driven reason I joined this organization. My mom passed away from cancer in 2021. I'm a former basketball player, so there's a lot of touch points for me that brought me to this role. And I'm ecstatic to be here, and I'm very excited to be here with Brian and Alex today.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Um, so just real quickly, this will appear on our screen eventually, but for anyone who's listening right now and wants to take notes, v.org backslash SERMA. What is that site? Um, SERMA and the V Foundation have entered into a strategic partnership whereby we are going to try to raise funds directly for cancer research through the V Foundation. Um, v.org backslash SERMA will certainly be live. I think it's live at the moment, but it'll be live by the time you all hear this.
It's live.
Great.
I checked it before I hopped on. It's live.
Sounds good. Okay, excellent. I think my parents are going to be the first ones to donate before we're even done recording today. Um, in the spirit of 100% going directly to the cancer research, it is a pass-through site. Any funds that are donated through this go directly to the V Foundation for Cancer Research. So, Catherine, to you and to Mike on your team, thank you for helping set that up. We are so thrilled and proud to be a part of the process and looking forward to a long and fruitful relationship. Um, let's talk a little bit about some of the risks that 501(c)(3)s, the charitable organizations encounter, see, deal with on a day-to-day basis. Um, beyond the cancer and illnesses, what are you seeing, Catherine?
Definitely. So I think, I should mention I started in July of 2025, so I'm just about 5, 6 months in here. But as all of us probably have experienced at some point in our careers, the risks are like left, right, front, and center that I was seeing internally. And so when you think of 501(c)(3)s, right, they're not immune from the types of risks that for-profit organizations experience, although there are some that are unique to 501(c)(3)s. So I'll touch on a couple of sort of different buckets, I'm sure, which Alex experiences with his clients, and Brian, you do as well. Um, one being brand protection, right? When we think intellectual property, um, the V brand with our partnership with ESPN, the content, that's crucial to our business. And so, having strong trademarks strengthens our ability to be able to license, to be able to generate other income streams. And securing that is not an easy task, right? As we know, I'm not an IP lawyer, but I had to come in and sort of quickly learn and get up to speed on, what we had registered, what rights ESPN owns, what rights the V Foundation has registered to it. And so working through that, it's a great partnership we have with ESPN. They are truly, willing and able to help us in every which way they can, and have been, since '93 when they helped found this foundation. So intellectual property is a big one, just securing our brand identity. And that's not just for now, right? That is for our mission today and for years to come. And the victory over cancer, those are sort of our staple marks that you'll see. As Brian mentioned at the top, don't give up, don't ever give up. The phrase from Jimmy V's, sort of historic SB speech from '93. Those are all important things for us as we're able to work with partners and create different revenue opportunities for the business. Um, Aside from that, right, nonprofits, especially when you look at like governance and compliance. So I work very closely with our board of directors and our governance committee. And that is everything from looking at our governing documents, bylaws, which really should sort of be refreshed every 2 to 3 years as best practice. Um, Making sure that we're compliant, we have conflicts of interest policies, and that, when we look at our governing documents, my three sort of rules of thumb are always keep them flexible, keep them simple, um, and I'm blanking on the third one. Hopefully you'll edit this out. Um, Keep them flexible, keep them simple, and keep them straightforward for the board, because you don't ever want to overcommit your board to things that, in the future as the organization might evolve, that could prohibit or hinder them. And then the last one is contractually, right? I was talking with Alex before we started here. When we look at our partnerships and our sponsorships, you don't want to tiptoe the line of sort of unrelated business activity as a 501c3. So the agreements have to be lock and key, especially one of our big drivers is our events business. And I know we'll dive into that a little bit further. But some big things for me with agreements are, force majeure clauses, making sure those are buttoned up, especially coming off the pandemic, mutual indemnification, those cancellation, we have a lot of vendor agreements with hotels, caterers, considering alcohol consumption, all of those things like come up. And again, as Brian mentioned, that might not be the sexy work of what we do, but what is the sexy work is when that event goes off without a hitch. And it's because we have the proper contractual protections in place. And Alex, I don't know if you've seen anything with when it comes contractually that you would look out for or advise clients on.
So, in terms of being a litigator in the general liability field that I practice in terms of wanting to protect the brand, again, whether it's a for-profit or a not-for-profit company, at the end of the day, it's brand protection. Your client's name is always out there, and especially for an entity like the B Foundation, where a lot of people know who the B Foundation is. So you want to make sure that in the event that something does happen at your event, in terms of, is it a force majeure clause with a cancellation? Is it a simple slip and fall at an arena where the event is being held? In terms of those cases where there is unfortunately an incident that may arise, you want to make sure that you have your contracts in place, buttoned up nice, this so you know where you're transferring that risk. Whether it's, oh, okay, this is our liability, this is our responsibility, and knowing that right out the gate, or if it's hey, we're not responsible for this, we've delegated that responsibility to another entity to handle. And that's the way that you could handle your claims, I think, in a very efficient manner too, of, if this is a claim against us that we're responsible for, let's handle it. We know what we have to do. Let's get it resolved. Versus, hey, this wasn't our responsibility. Let's get it to the proper party who is responsible. So in terms of what I do, that's the most important thing, is reading through those contracts. And it's like Brian said, it's the sexy field that we're in, working with all these great organizations and these well-known entities. But it's the same versus a mom and pop department store versus a well-known arena in the United States or something like the V Foundation. So getting all of that buttoned up is key.
Yeah, for sure. And you touched upon sort of policies, right? Our CGL policies have to be buttoned up. They have to have expansive coverage. We often, too, for our events, will name our vendors because it's contractually, a lot of them, it's a sticking point, want to be additional insureds, right? And so we make sure they have their COIs ahead of time. And that's across all vendors when we host our events. So our CGL policies, right? I'm a big proponent of, umbrella and excess follow form because I like consistent coverage. And so that was something when I came into the V, to make sure, just to take a broad spectrum, like, hey, let's do a little bit of an audit of our policies. What do we have in place? When's renewal? What are the exclusions? Those kinds of things that prior to me joining, they didn't have an in-house lawyer. And so that's just something I think they've leaned on me a little bit more for. But I'm excited for that because it is to mitigate potential risk and liability down the road.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, Katherine. When the V Foundation has the Jimmy V Classic, are are we putting the V Foundation, are we putting the name, the logo, the brand out there on an event that's going to be taking place? Or is the V Foundation taking over running and facilitating? And where I'm going with that is, what type of liability would the V Foundation look at accepting for an event like this?
It's limited, right? So because the ESPN is the driver, right? Like they are the content. That's who the broadcast flows through. But what I can say is we have events interspersed throughout. So the Jimmy V Classic tomorrow night, that is fully sort of an ESPN run and sponsored event. You'll see plenty of advertising for the V Foundation again because they're very generous partners to us. But we will host. We're hosting donors and partners at MSG for the event and before the event, right? So we share the risk. It's not, I wouldn't call it a true transfer of risk in the sense that like only one party's on the hook. But we do name ESPN or we do name MSG rather as an additional insured under our broad CGL policy.
For
And so
for the
should
limited
anything
scope,
arise,
I'm sorry, for the limited scope of that particular donor reception or that
correct.
pop, not for every single attendee who's coming in and maybe drinks too much from
No.
regular concessionaire. Okay.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, I don't have control over who's controlling the consumption of alcohol. But but MSG, of course, we know as a big player has their broader coverage than we would have. So it's limited to what we are hosting at the Garden.
Those specific events. Excellent. 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 Okay. Excellent. Alex, have you come across that situation where for a live event, the host venue has looked to push all liability to a sponsor or a promoter?
I personally haven't seen it. It would depend on what the scope of the involvement is by the sponsor, though. You would imagine, say, if a sponsor who says, yes, you get to use our naming rights and to put on this event, and then the sponsor gets very hands-on in, well, I want this security personnel involved. I want this particular vendor involved. Where now you have a very, not, I wouldn't want to say controlling sponsor, but you have a sponsor who is involved with the process.
Yep.
Rather than saying, hey, let's contract with this arena or this venue, and venue or arena, you're going to be responsible for everything. We defer to you. You could use our name. You could use our trademarks. But really, for putting on the event, we want you to do this. In those cases, I think then it becomes very easy to say venue, arena, depending on the circumstances, are probably more responsible should a risk or an incident arise. Now the question becomes, as Brian mentioned, what happens if there is more involvement in the sponsor? So if a sponsor comes in and says, okay, venue, I see that you have this security company as a preferred vendor, and you're recommending us use X amount of security personnel. We don't like that. We want to use, and I'm not saying it would happen, but we want to use a different vendor and less security than what you're recommending. If, God forbid, an incident arises now, there could be an argument against a sponsor of an event of saying, hey, sponsor, you took now an involving, you were very involved in the setup of this event, and therefore, because of your involvement here, and for instance, with the hypothetical of changing the number of security personnel, because of your involvement and saying that we should have less security personnel, now an incident arose, now this is going to fall back to you. So I think it's going to come down to how involved the sponsor is, Brian, to whether or not they're going to get any potential liability against them.
Like for what the legal, like you could just slice and dice it, right? A bunch of different ways what the legal argument is. What my fallback is always, to bring it back full circle here, we're a 501c3. You know, you got to play that card sometimes.
We talked a little bit about the intellectual property and brand protection. Um, let's get right into that, because for me, as an IP attorney, I just find it fascinating. Um, how far do you go to protect your brand against infringers?
I mean, again, in my minimal time here, 6 months, so like I haven't seen an instant yet. I'm knock on the table here. But I think one of the key things too is in-house counsel is you have to sort of assess your organization's risk tolerance, right? Um, I can say that working across our leadership team, marketing, development, and finance, sort of the key players when it would come to IP. I think our risk tolerance is like we wouldn't have tolerance for any infringers, and I do think there would be an appetite to go after those folks if that were to ever arise. To my knowledge, it hasn't. And historically, again, that's just a little bit of the unknown as I'm coming in here and sort of auditing what's been done in the past. Are we, we're not going to be the type of an organization to run like an anti-ambush campaign, right? Just resource wise, we don't have the capability to do that. But I think if we did receive some type of knowledge, of an infringer, definitely a cease and desist would go out. I think that we've reached a level of our organization that we have to do that. We want to be a $100 million granting organization by 2030. So we have lofty goals, and we've doubled in the last 2 or 3 years in our revenue generation. So we are now sort of, our trajectory is putting us on a pedestal. Well, I think we have the capability and we should do that.
Alex, do you deal with brand protection at that level?
Not for the trademark and infringement side of it, but I was gonna follow up on with what Katherine was saying of when you have such an important organization like the V Foundation, if there's someone infringing on that trademark for a purpose that is absolutely the antithesis of what the V Foundation is for and supportive of, at the end of the day, you have to protect that brand. So while it is very, very costly from the IP side of these litigation, the IP litigation, at the end of the day, it's we have to protect the name, the V Foundation, and what it stands for and how it's viewed in the public. When you have someone infringing on that trademark and on certain things that the V Foundation owns the rights to, and using it as a way to go against it, now that's impacting potentially the public perception of the V Foundation. So I completely agree with wanting to protect the name and the importance of what the V Foundation is for.
Yeah, so I alluded to, as general counsel for a 501(c)(3) here in Chicago that deals with suicide prevention, mental health awareness, eliminating the stigma of mental health. They've got a very, very well known, very famous trademark that we end up seeing everywhere. Everyone under the sun seems to be using that. And we've always, we've kind of had to pick and choose, where do we go after someone versus how do we allow people to use it? Um, if it's another charitable organization, if it's another entity with good intent, we'll figure out a way to license, co-brand, allow them to use it under a license so that we're not waiving any rights and whatnot, and we're always maintaining the integrity of the mark. When we find out that it's a bad user who's just trying to sell T-shirts using our name or our logo, um, you haven't had to file suit against them yet, but I've scared them out of the marketplace several times, which is always, as an attorney, sometimes it's fun to get paid to be the heavy, right?
And I'll follow up on that quickly, Brian, because I think you raised a good point. We're uniquely positioned because one of the other benefits that we have is our partnerships. So we can lean on an ESPN. We have a partnership with the NHL, Hockey Fights Cancer, where we're the charitable partner for North America, right? And so I do think that's another sort of rabbit we could pull out of the hat if we did need to enforce something. We have really, really collaborative partners that would work with us to help us in that way.
I think it's great to have those partners that have a vested interest in the overall project, the overall goal. Um, we want to see the V Foundation succeed under every circumstance, and we want the value of the brand. We want the value of that mark held at the extremely high level. So we want to fight to help protect that any way we can. I think that's just good business. Dealing with the 501(c)(3s, I have encountered financial issues, which if funds are coming in from one source, they're fine. If the funds come in from a different source, they're questionable. And how funds get used potentially jeopardizes the standing of the 501(c)(3), which is a tax standing with the IRS. Um, how involved are you getting into that situation? Possibly directing all of your accountants, your financial advisors, but, how do you guys protect it and maintain?
Well, fortunately, I haven't had to get into that because I'm very proud to sort of share this. This is a fun fact that I think folks on this, not the general public, would appreciate, but maybe I think lawyers would. We are 13 years in a row. We've been rated as a 4-star charity via Charity Navigator, and that falls into the top 2% of all charities evaluated. And so we are pretty stringent about our fiscal responsibility. As mentioned, 100% of the dollars raised goes directly to cancer research. And I work very closely with our CFO. We're in audit season right now because our fiscal year actually runs October 1 to September 30th each year. So we are in the midst working with our outside auditors. And what's filed, as you know, Brian, with the 501(c)(3 is a Form 990 every year. And so that goes through diligent review with our independent auditors. They work closely with our internal financial team. And then I'm, a second layer of reviewing to make sure that legally what we're saying, the narratives that we put in our Form 990 are accurate because it is financials, right? It's a lot of the numbers, and another piece to the V Foundation that's a little less uncommon is we have a supporting organization aptly named Don't Ever Give Up Inc. And that's sort of our events business. And so that is how the expenses flow for our events. And that helps us be able to ensure that, every single dollar is going toward the mission. And that when we report on it, it's 100% accurate year after year.
What are you doing for workers' comp and employees and their risk?
I have a very good broker that helps with that.
I gotta tell you, I do a lot of presentations to young developing musicians and artists and bands and whatnot. And one of the first questions they always ask is, at what point should I hire an accountant? At what point should I get a broker? At what point should I hire an attorney? And it's always the same response. If you're asking the question, it's too late. You should have already been doing that. So I appreciate that. Tell us a little bit about what we're going to accomplish at the Jimmy V Classic tomorrow.
Well, what are we going to accomplish? So, right, we have 2 premier matchups. First matchup is BYU versus Clemson. Second matchup is UConn versus Florida. And so UConn and Florida, between the two of them, they've won the national championship 3 years in a row. So first and foremost, I think you're going to see really good basketball. On top of that, we also host the following day one of our signature events, the Booyah event, which is named in honor of legendary ESPN anchor Stuart Scott, who passed away from cancer in 2015. So we've established the Stuart Scott Cancer Memorial Fund that to date has awarded $22.1 million solely for cancer disparities and scientists who are breaking barriers in cancer disparities. And so it's a big week for us, right? So tomorrow night's games are going to get the juices flowing, get everyone excited. We're having our board meeting the following day. So we're going to have a lot of supporters here. Followed, sort of the penultimate event is the Stuart Scott Booyah Gala, where we will actually be honoring Randy Moss with an award. And so there's just a lot happening. So it's not just tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is going to be amazing. But it's really a big week for our organization, especially, again, our fiscal year is a little different, but we still, as any nonprofit wants to do, we want to close out the calendar year strong. And so the hope is that we will raise some serious dollars over these next couple of days.
And all our listeners can contribute to that at v.org/SERMA. Say it with me. v.org.
v.org /SERMA.
What else can people do to help in the process?
We take plenty of volunteers too for our events. And so that's another, there's, I think, a whole area of our website dedicated to volunteers. We're just expanding. So we are in 10 markets now, and I think by next year we're going to be in 12. And so volunteering is also an opportunity for us. And that's another thing to account for in risk, that our policies also have to sort of cover volunteers. But supporting in financial means, time, volunteering, we accept it all, and we appreciate when the general public sort of outside of, what inspired me most was Jimmy V's speech, right? That is really what inspired, and that was the call to action as to why we were founded. I watch it much more regularly now that I'm with the organization, probably once a week. I'm at least getting a snippet here and there. And, it really gets you going every day. If you listen to that speech, or, my favorite line is, if you think, laugh, and cry every day, that's a full day. That's a heck of a day. You do that 7 days a week, you're on to something special. And so that's just kind of a blueprint for life. So outside of giving, right, I think just identifying with the mission, identifying with what we're doing, listening to that speech in your everyday life, I think can help us all.
My mother happens to be a breast cancer survivor. And I was with my parents over Thanksgiving and just raving about how excited we were that SERMA was doing our strategic partnership with the V Foundation. I just think it's the coolest thing. And my mom wasn't sure who Jimmy Valvano was. My dad knew right away, obviously, because I watched the speech with him, 30 years ago, 32 years ago. I saw it live. So I pulled it up on the iPad and I played it for my mom. Uh, she was blown away and moved to tears. Not a sports fan at all, but just moved to tears. And for anyone who hasn't had the pleasure of watching the speech, it's one of one. It is the single most inspirational speech that I have ever heard. Nothing else has ever come close to it. So
I will add, he was on to something. And that was 1993, right? When he knew that cancer research, there's also a part in his speech where he says, it might not save my life, but it might save my children's life. It might save your children's life. Cancer research actually is helping, right? So over the last decade, cancer-related deaths has decreased by 1.7%. And it's projected, so right now we're at about 18.1 million cancer survivors in the US to date. By 2030, we're going to have 22.1 million. And that's really because of the driving factor of cancer research, which, if you remember when he got up on that podium, he sort of told his story with his doctors at Duke. And he was on to something early. And I think the statistics show it, that we're going to have more cancer survivors. Now, that doesn't mean that it's still not going to affect a lot of us. There are still cancer-related deaths, many, many more than we don't want any. But our goal is to, really achieve victory over cancer, as you see on our sort of backdrop here. That's what we do, why we do what we do every day, is inspired by Coach B.
excellent. Yeah, it's not just the the treatment and the procedures. It's the early detection that has advanced, which is what benefited my mother. So because they discovered her condition so quickly and early on, thank God. So and thank the V Foundation. So yeah. All right. Any final thoughts?
Again, this is the job of a lifetime for me. It's an honor to sit in this role. And it's truly an honor to partner with SERMA, with you, Alex and Brian. I'm excited about this partnership. I think it couldn't be more of a seamless alignment. When you talk about risk in the tangible sense, cancer risk, and then it just complements each other so well with the work that SERMA does, the members that it has, and the organization that it's really kind of blossomed into. Again, very excited to partner to see where we can go with it, and appreciate everyone for tuning in. And if you remember, one thing from today, v.org/SERMA, very, very easy, seamless way you can read a little bit more about the partnership, what SERMA does and how we're working together. And you can also donate to what I'm not biased, I promise, but what is a very, very good cause, and you know exactly where your dollars are going.
And it's an honor for you to be here with us today, too, just being able to support an organization like the V Foundation. So, sorry I jumped in, Brian. Go ahead.
No, it is a phenomenal foundation, and Surma is thankful, grateful, blessed to be able to be a part of this journey and to be a part of this, and we're so excited. So thank you very much for this, and we're looking forward to a phenomenal year and years to come. I want to remind everyone to keep a lookout for our upcoming webinars that we've got, and we have a webinar every month. We've got a podcast every other week. In April, we've got Seminar 4, which is going to be at Citi Field in New York. And actually, Katherine, I think I saw the roster. I think you're on one of the panels for that. So that'll be a lot of fun. Alex, I know you've got a trial to get back to. So I want to leave everyone with happy holidays. And don't forget, v.org/SERMA. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. Thank you.